Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Jurassic Zoological Garden, and today we are building our very first lagoon with a glass bridge on top for the Attenborosaurus, and I am really excited to show you this lagoon, so let's get started. For this Jurassic Zoo, I wanted to build one lagoon only, so it had to be also somewhat special, as this is zoo nothing too fancy. We won't have like a bunch of big carnivores or like big sauropods and stuff like that, or a bunch of different lagoons and aviaries. So I only had this one chance basically to built a very special lagoon in here, and I also made up a poll on my channel and you guys voted for the Attenborosaurus, so of course I had to place this one in here. For the marine animal that was going in here, I only wanted to have it not super large like a Mosasaurus, and so I made the poll between the Attenborosaurus, the Plesiosaurus and the Ichthyosaurus, and the Attenboro definitely won. So I'm very pleased to finally welcome this dinosaur in our zoo. And for the lagoon, I originally didn't really have any idea how to make like a really nice lagoon where it would also be nice to look at for the visitors. And when I saw the video from Evolution Square on how to build lagoons, or basically different tips on how to make really beautiful lagoons in this game, I definitely had to redo something like that. And so I basically went for a more natural vibe, so I basically covered the whole lagoon with these rocks. And since I also wanted to have a little bit more of a shallow lagoon so that the guests will actually be able to see the dinosaurs swimming in there and it would not be super deep, I placed down the Mediterranean rocks at the bottom, and I use the Mediterranean ones because they are really light, so they almost look more like sand under the water. And I made about one half of the lagoon more shallow and then one part also relatively deep, so that the dinosaurs also have more than enough space to swim around and dive around and stuff like that. So I did that, and it is really important that all of the rocks and gaps in between those rocks are filled, so that the dinosaurs will not go in between those rocks and probably get stuck. And also really important, you need to have collision on. I basically have collision on in every pieces, every habitat, so that the movement of the dinosaurs is still natural, so they don't glitch around or something like this. So I normally always have this on, but just in case you don't, definitely make sure that collision is on, otherwise the dinosaurs will just swim straight through those rocks. So for the bottom, Mediterranean rocks, and from the sides I use the tropical ones, and I made sure to get one of those really big rocks that go really far down, so that the whole wall will be covered by those rocks and that there's no gaps in between. And then I also placed a couple of flatter ones on the sides to kind of make little land areas that are not usable and just for decorations, but I feel like this works perfectly fine, and so that I could place some more vegetation around there, some foliage, so that it does not look too bare. I mean, you can definitely go for a completely rocky habitat, but I wanted to have a little bit more foliage, so I used these little platforms to put some more foliage and some greenery in this habitat. For the guests to be actually able to see the dinosaurs swimming in the lagoon, I originally struggled a bit to come up with an idea on how to make it possible and also to make it like usable. I mean, the bridge is not actually usable for the guests as I cannot place a path over it, but usable in the sense of where it would make sense if they would be walking there to be actually able to see them. So not to like place little windows on the sides of the lagoon. I was originally also thinking about basically digging out the lagoon out of the ground so that guests would be able to walk on the side of the lagoon and then place like little fake windows with water behind it, but then they would of course not be able to see the dinosaurs. I mean, just for the sake of the decoration and realism, you could definitely do so, but I also like my things to be somewhat practical at least. So I came up with the idea of this glass bridge, and I took inspiration heavily from one picture that I found on Pinterest. It was not actually a photograph, but it was more like a drawn picture where it was a very simple like lagoon for a zoo habitat. It was also really rocky, so the whole sides were all rocks and then just water, and then there was this bridge with a little round platform in the middle that was a little bit sunken under water level, so that the water would also be going up the sides of the walls a little bit. And I took heavy inspiration from that, so I really wanted to build this glass bridge on top. And we do have one piece in this game that is like actual glass, and that's actually working in the sense of that we can actually see through this, because we don't have more pieces than that. We only have this one in like various shapes and sizes, and also gridded and non-gridded, but other than that we do not have any other piece where we can actually see through, and also no windows that we can actually see through, which is kind of a shame, because I definitely do love using glass pieces. But for this project, this piece was actually more than enough. So it did work perfectly fine, and I made the glass bridge a little bit over water level, since placing it into the water would actually result in it being flooded with water, as it does not hold back the water in the game. But I am actually more than perfectly fine with placing it a little bit on top of the water, and then people can look down at this bridge and actually see the Attenborosaurus swimming underneath. Also for the glass bridge, I had this vision of having the walls a little bit slanted so that the guests can maybe look down a little bit better also from the sides and not only from the floor, and then also having this handrail on the side so that the guests can like hold themselves on the handrail and not be touching the glass all over, especially since it is slanted. And I feel like it came out really beautifully. I was struggling a bit to find some pieces, as I'm still not really familiar with all these small pieces that we have with like the metal stuff and everything in between, this little tiny pieces that can be very useful for a variety of things, especially since I like making things really detailed and really tiny things especially. So I do still struggle a little bit with this, finding the proper pieces, especially since we do not have a favorites tab. I relied heavily on my favorites tab in Planet Zoo, and here we just did not have it, which is also such a shame. I wish they would finally implement this, that we can make favorites in our pieces. But for now, I still kind of have to scroll around to just find some pieces. And also, since the glass bridge or the walls of the glass bridge are slanted, I do have gaps in some spots, and I didn't really know on how to fill them in, because normally I would have used glass, but since we do not have proper pieces, I had to come up with something else. And I came up with having this little metal structure with these ropes, or like metal ropes in between, so that guests will not be like climbing through there or falling through there. I'm not sure if it would be like super realistic, but I think it does still work out. We are not probably gonna do like heavy realism in here, especially with these little bridges that go over the barrier of the habitat that I'm building right now, they could be maybe a little bit more safe, if I'm honest with you. I did try to make it look a little bit more safe where it was directly over the water, but we do not have these like very big barriers, so guests cannot like jump over them, climb over them. They definitely could if they wanted to, with the way I designed them, but I am honestly quite fine with it looking like that. I'm not trying to be super hard, especially since this zoo will be nothing too crazy, or this whole zoo project. It will be more like, I don't know, maybe like a normal regular zoo, not too fancy, nothing crazy. As I said, we don't be building a bunch of big lagoons and aviaries and stuff like that. I do plan on building one or maybe two aviaries, but I don't really want to have these really big buildings in the zoo. And also regarding the dinosaurs, I will be using mostly small to medium-sized animals. I might be doing like one or two big carnivores and also maybe a smaller sauropod, but definitely not the really big ones. I was thinking about maybe doing a different zoo project at some point, where it will be like super modern, really crazy, with like big dinosaurs, a bunch of big carnivores, sauropods, the mosasaurus and stuff like that. I might be doing that at some point, but I definitely want to finish this zoo first, before I start a different project, because I tend to lose interest in projects as soon as I do different ones. So I will be sticking with this one for now, and at some point we will be doing a different one. I also don't really want to make this zoo too big or have all of the different dinosaurs in here. So we will be doing a couple more habitats for sure, but this will be not like a super big project with all of the different kinds of dinosaurs in there. So I can be building something else, maybe even like a really realistic, like modern time zoo, which just happens to have dinosaurs. I saw one picture where someone was building a habitat, or had built a habitat for, I'm not sure what dinosaur it was. It was like a smaller, medium-sized herbivore, but it did look like a realistic zoo habitat there that could have housed like a hippo or a rhinoceros or stuff like that. And I really loved that, and I definitely want to do something like that in the future. Maybe in Jurassic World 3, maybe even in Prehistoric Kingdom, because I actually do have this game, or had this game, for a couple of years when it still was in the beta, and maybe I will also start building in there. And for the last finishing details, I placed down a couple more of the tropical rocks down in the lagoon itself on top of the Mediterranean ones, since the Mediterranean rocks are supposed to look like sand. So I wanted to also have a couple of rocks here and there. And then I placed a couple of dead trees, some plants. I mostly used this like seagrass and also these really big ones that is also part of the nesting area for the lagoons, and I placed some of them here and there, so there would be a little bit going on. I didn't want to go too crazy since it's still a lagoon and the animals are just swimming around in there, but I still wanted to have it look a little bit more naturalistic and a little bit more interesting for the guests, and not to just look at plain sand. And of course I also placed down the marine feeder, so we also have a couple of fish swimming around in this lagoon, and of course the Attenborosaurus also has something to feed on. As I said, I also placed down a couple of like bushes, trees and plants on these little platforms, so it does look a little bit more lively and a bit more greener in this lagoon. And I also placed a little like platform, I would say, next to the hatchery, the hatchery is supposed to look like more of like a holding area or holding pen for these animals. I originally only placed it down so to release the dinosaurs, but I thought it does look perfectly fine as like a backstage area for the lagoon. And then I also made this little platform so that the staff can actually go up there, feed the animals, potentially even like look at them directly for like treating purposes, or maybe do a little bit of training. And also this little platform where they can go down a little bit more into the water so they can be really close to the dinosaurs. The lagoon is up on the workshop, and in order for you to place down the lagoon properly, I quickly want to throw in a little like tutorial. So you basically have to place down the lagoon first, which consists of 3 lagoons in like of a triangle. Then you can go to blueprints if you have downloaded it, and then you just have to scroll around a little bit over the lagoon for it to fit, and at some point it will click and then be able to be placed down. So now the lagoon will be perfectly on top of there, and then you will need to place one of the marine feeders down at the very beginning of the glass bridge where the lagoon size is, so that the wall gets flattened out so that the planters also work, and you will have to need one anyways for the animals to feed. And we are almost at the very end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it and that you like the way I designed this lagoon. Let me know down in the comments and hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't be missing any more videos that are about to come for Jurassic World Evolution 3. You will now be seeing the finished result in the cinematic shots, and I'm already saying my goodbyes, so I hope to see you in the next episode. Until then, bye guys!